On a stormy night, Arav, a young photographer, drove through an abandoned road. His car suddenly broke down near an ancient mansion hidden behind twisted trees. The iron gates creaked open on their own. He felt an icy wind brush his neck. The mansion's windows glowed faintly, even though it looked abandoned for decades. The urge to capture a perfect shot pulled him inside. But the silence inside felt heavier than death itself. Inside, the smell of rot mixed with something metallic. Each step on the wooden floor echoed unnaturally long. Arav noticed portraits on the wall, faces with hollow eyes staring back. One portrait caught his attention. A woman in a black gown, holding a candle, her lips twisted in a smirk. As he took a picture, the candle in the portrait flickered. Then the real hallway lights dimmed. His camera screen glitched, showing the woman standing behind him. He spun around, no one there. Heart pounding, he continued. The mansion seemed endless. Hallways twisted into new shapes. A whisper brushed his ear, calling his name. But he never told anyone here who he was. Shivers ran down his spine. The whisper grew louder, now sounding like multiple voices, some crying, some laughing. He reached a grand staircase, its banister dripping with fresh, warm blood. Arav touched the banister and a cold vision slammed into his mind. Shadows dragging screaming people up the stairs. He stumbled back, gasping. The front door was now gone. Only a wall remained. He ran into the living room, where a dusty chandelier swayed as if something had brushed past it. A single chair sat in the middle, facing a giant mirror, but the mirror reflected a different room entirely. In the reflection, the room was alive. Golden lights, music, and people dancing in elegant clothes. But their faces were pale, eyes black, movements jerky like broken dolls. One of them stopped, turned to the mirror, and smiled directly at him. Then, in unison, they all turned their heads to stare at him, mouths opening impossibly wide. The glass cracked and a hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Arav screamed, yanking back. The hand retreated, but a faint black mark burned into his skin. His phone buzzed. It was a message. "You can't leave until you take her picture." There was no number. The air grew colder and footsteps echoed upstairs. Against every instinct, he followed the sound. The stairs groaned, each step feeling heavier, as if something was trying to pull him down. At the top, a long hallway stretched with doors on both sides. Most were locked, but one creaked open slowly. Inside, a child's bedroom lay untouched, except for the small rocking horse moving on its own. A music box on the bed began playing. A whisper rose from under the bed. "She's waiting in the dark." Arav knelt, trembling, and peeked underneath. Two glowing eyes stared back. The creature lunged out, a pale, faceless figure with long black hair. Arav ran, slamming the door behind him. The whispering followed from the walls themselves. He burst into another room, a study filled with books. On the desk lay an old diary. Its pages detailed the mansion's history, a wealthy family murdered in 1892. Their souls bound to a woman named Alara, the one in the black gown. The diary claimed Alara wasn't human. She fed on the life force of anyone entering the mansion, trapping their souls forever. Arav's hands shook as he read about a photographer from 1975 who disappeared here, leaving behind his camera, still containing the final picture of Alara's smile. That same camera now sat on the desk, pointing toward him. A shadow fell over the desk. Arav turned slowly. There she was. Alara's face was almost human, but her mouth stretched unnaturally, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. The candle she held dripped black wax that hissed on the floor. "Take my picture," she whispered, "and join them." Arav, frozen, raised his camera. The flash went off, but instead of blinding her, it blinded him. When his vision returned, he was standing in the ballroom from the mirror. The pale guests clapped slowly, their smiles grotesque. Alara stood beside him, placing a cold hand on his shoulder. "Welcome home," she said. Arav realized he was holding a glass of wine, dressed in the same black and white attire as the others. The mark on his wrist had spread across his veins, turning them black. He dropped the glass, trying to run, but his legs moved like they were not his own. A mirror appeared in front of him, showing his reflection, but his eyes were now completely black. The guests surrounded him, chanting in a language older than time. Alara leaned in, her voice like silk. One picture for eternity. She raised the old camera, and the flash went off again. Arav found himself back in the hallway, alone. The mansion was silent again. Had it all been a hallucination? His watch said only 10 minutes had passed. He ran to the front. This time, the door was there. He bolted outside into the storm, not looking back until he reached his car. But when he checked his camera, there was one new picture, Alara standing right behind him, smiling. The next day, Arav's friends came looking for him. They found his car parked on the same abandoned road, headlights still on, but no sign of him. On the passenger seat lay his camera. The last photo was of Arav, wearing a black suit, smiling unnaturally with empty black eyes. The mansion behind him looked brand new. Weeks later, a tourist group visited the area. Among them was a young woman with a camera. She saw a beautiful, well-lit mansion at the end of the road, with a charming man in a suit at the gate, inviting her inside. She didn't know that man's name was Arav, and that the moment she took his picture, she'd never leave again.